I want you to take a few moments to reflect on the imagined scenario that no one in your household, including yourself, could drive. Could you still access the places you needed and wanted to go? For some of you, this may be an easy answer since you don't drive or have access to a car and have already found ways of making it work. For the rest of you, my estimate is that about 2/3 would find it challenging. This is the proportion of people in Canada that live in suburban contexts and likely live further away from the destinations they go to and have limited or non-existent access to transit. 2/3 of the Canadian population translates to roughly an estimated 25 million people that live in contexts where a car makes it much easier to get places. My 96-year-old grandfather is one of those people. He lives by himself in a townhome in Waterdown, a neighborhood in Hamilton, Ontario, where the vast majority of people get around by car. 2 years ago, in the midst of the pandemic, he unexpectedly lost his driver's license while at a doctor's appointment. He was devastated. Even though he rarely drove in latter years, to him, the loss of a driver's license meant he no longer was able to independently move around his community. As you can see from this map, he lives in a fairly residential neighborhood. The closest grocery store to him is Fortino's, which is just over 2 kilometers away. Despite feeling down about losing his driver's license, he did adapt rather quickly, only a month after purchasing electric scooters for himself and my grandmother so that they could get their mail at the end of the block and scoot around their neighborhood. A couple of months ago, he decided to venture a little bit further away and try and make it all the way on his electric scooter to the grocery store. Unfortunately, he only got part way when he came up against railway tracks. Nervous about crossing the tracks, he decided to turn around when his wheels got stuck in the tracks, and he tipped right over on his scooter onto the railway tracks. Fortunately, he was all right, and with the help of a driver who stopped to help, he was able to get back upright and make it back home. He hasn't given up on his pursuit to make it to the grocery store, but for the meantime, he's resorted to getting rides from family. My grandfather's struggle with transportation after losing the ability to drive is not unique. Last September, I was part of a provincial consultation on driving cessation, where we heard from seniors and people working in the senior serving sector on the topic of driving cessation. Participants described the transition as a very emotional one that raised strong emotions such as anger, frustration, sadness, shame, and anxiety. Hearing these stories and witnessing secondhand how my grandparents navigated the transportation system as they aged is what inspired me to focus on seniors transportation for my dissertation. My research broadly aims to understand the question, how can we better design our cities so that older adults can age in place and thrive in their communities? This research is timely. As we've been hearing about for some time now, the population is aging in Canada and in countries around the world. Recognizing this, the United Nations declared this decade as the decade of healthy aging. One of the 4 action areas set out in the decade is to create age-friendly environments. This is the action area within which my research is situated, and more specifically in thinking around age-friendly built environments and transportation systems. So what do I hope to accomplish in my PhD? As an applied population health researcher, I want my dissertation to contribute empirical evidence that advances solutions for seniors' transportation challenges. I am working on 3 separate analyses that will move the agenda forward in the following ways. My first analysis will provide researchers, practitioners, and policymakers with an updated profile of seniors' transportation patterns and characterize a population that reports unmet transportation needs. The most recent comprehensive national snapshot of seniors' transportation was summarized in a paper that used data from 2008. Since then, we now have the Canadian Longitudinal Study on Aging, which is tracking over 50,000 older Canadians across Canada. I'll be tapping into this data set for my analysis. My second analysis will provide municipal decision makers and planners with evidence on public acceptability of built environment interventions that can improve older adults' ability to get around by active travel. So that's walking, cycling, and other modes. For this, I'm drawing from another national survey that surveyed over 27,000 Canadians living in the 17 largest Canadian metropolitan areas. For my last contribution, I'm taking a community-engaged approach to provide evidence that informs the provincial working groups on seniors transportation's efforts to advocate for better transportation services in British Columbia. This is an opportunity that came about through an internship I completed with United Way last year, where they asked me to lead case studies on promising models of seniors transportation. Taken together, I hope the contributions of my thesis will lead to tangible solutions that would enable my grandfather and other older adults who don't drive to continue to access the places they need and want to go as they age. This will not only help the older adults in our lives, but also has the potential to benefit all generations. Improving older adults' ability to get around will also make it easier for younger generations who don't drive to get around independently, and can also help relieve some of the caregiving burden that's often placed on that middle generation who can be caught between supporting their parents and children at the same time. I'm about halfway through completing my dissertation and hope to have it completed by spring 2024. Stay tuned for more updates along the way. Thanks for listening.